Okay, good afternoon. Welcome to Yeshiva's YouTube. Iyun Talina on the Iyun on the Shulchan Aruch Yomi. Today's Siman Hilchos Kriya Shema Siman Samach Tet 69. Um, I want to talk about um, the Ramah mentioned something over here. He says if you're being Poris al Shema basically means over here that people, stragglers, they came late to shul. The minyanim are done. They can barely find 10 people, so they have to leave or whatever. So they want to be Yotze, Kaddish, and Baruch Hu, and Kedusha, right? And Shmona Esrei, and these are things that are Dvarim Shvilush. You need 10 people. There's halacha, Poris al Shema. Poris is lashon of pras, right? A portion. They can divide the tefillah into parts, and just say, gather 10 people together, and one person leads them, and they say he says Kaddish, Baruch Hu. They answer Baruch Hu. According to the Shulchan Aruch, you say the first bracha. According to the Ramah, you don't have to say the first bracha. Yotzer Or. And then he proceeds to Shmona Esrei. He says the first 2 or 3 brachas, and you say Kedusha. And then he continues his Shmona Esrei, but you stop. You already Yotze Kaddish, Baruch and Kedusha. You Yotze everything. Now the Ramah mentions in Siman Aleph, he says you could even do this, even if you're someone right who didn't say Berachos Kriya Shema at all. Now you're being Yotze all your Chiyuvim now, and we know basically when you're going, you're skipping from Baruch Hu or from the end of Yotzer Or straight to Shmona Esrei, so you're not being Someh Geulah Tefillah ostensibly. Right, that's what he says. That's what the Ramah says. Even though you're going to give up, Samach Geulah Tefillah, it's better to do this because at least you'll have 10 people. There's Dvarim Shebek Kedusha, Baruch Hu, Kaddish, and Kedusha. So even though you won't be Samach Geulah Tefillah, that's okay. That's okay. Because this is better. This is better that you say these things which are Dvarim Shebek Kedusha. The Ramah additionally mentions in the beginning over here that he says that the minhag is not to do this at Marav, because there's no Kaddish before Baruch Hu in Marav, so therefore there's no minhag to do Prisas al Shema. But later on the Ramah does mention that sometimes people do it by Marav, and he gives the halachas about that. So what's going on over here? So I mentioned yesterday in the Iyun shir that, or previous Iyun shir, I don't remember which Iyun shir I mentioned it, but Someh Geulah Tefillah, there's a mitzvah by Shachris. At Marav, we're not so makbid about Someh Geulah Tefillah. It's a mitzvah, but it's not liikuva. It's not so important. The Gemara mentions how Someh Geulah Tefillah is so important that one of the Amoraim Tanaim used to smile the whole day if it was Someh Geulah Tefillah. What's the big deal? Someh Geulah Tefillah. I'd like to suggest that Someh Geulah Tefillah, we assume it means the last bracha, Gal Yisrael, and then right away you go into Shmona Esrei. But I like to suggest that it's not the Pshat Someh Geulah Tefillah. Someh Geulah Tefillah is a whole procession, meaning it's an order. We start off. It starts Geulah Tefillah, as I mentioned. We start off with a Kaddish, then we do Baruch Hu, then we do Yotzer or Ava Rabba, Shema, Geulah, and then Tefillah. Now, what's going on over here? So I explained previously that it's an order that goes on. First you say, I didn't explain Kaddish and Baruch, I'm going to explain it right now, but first Yotzer, you talk about that Hashem has might all over the world, He created the world. Then you talk about Ava Rabbah, that we have the Torah. Shema, we say the Torah, and then we talk about the Torah is what saves us, right? We're born as slaves. We need the Torah to free us from our slavery. And once we have that, then we can proceed to Geulah. And then once we're free, then we can have Tefillah, where we're free to direct our attention to the positive things in life. Sur Mirah, you got the Asay Tov in Tefillah, and you can find the proper direction to use your talents and use your kochos. That's the purpose of Tefillah, to contemplate where you're heading in life, what my strengths are, what I can do with my day, what I can do with my life. So we always assume that Someh Geulah Tefillah is the last bracha, but it's really a procession of Geulah. Right? Geulah, you can only be free if you were in prison before, and I think now just explain Kaddish and Baruch Hu, that precedes Yotzer Or. Kaddish is something that we say a lot of times, but there's Kaddish Yasom, and there's Kaddish you say for a dead person. Kaddish is really an acknowledgement that Hashem is in control, even when we're dead. I mean, that's where Kaddish. We say it a lot of times, but it's like starting off as dead, because we're starting off as dead, and we're created as slaves. But Baruch Hu then introduces, let's bless Hashem, and then we start Yotzer Or, that He created the world. So we're starting off as dead. We were dead at one point. The world is Yesh Ma'ayin, we believe. What didn't exist at one point, seemingly. So it didn't exist. We were dead at one point, and now we became alive. We're born into slavery, and that's basically what we're saying. And then we need the Torah to free us, and we get free, and then we have Tefillah So, Kaddish and Baruch Hu are really part of Geulah. They're a part of a procession of leading from death to slavery to Geulah. So, part of that process, as far as Somech Geulah Tefillah is, we're not. So the halacha is that even though you're not technically saying the bracha of Gal Yisrael, and maybe only saying Yotzar, or maybe only saying Kaddish and Baruch Hu, that's good enough. That's still called Geulah Tefillah. It's not that the Ramah is saying that you're not being Somech Geulah Tefillah, because I really highly doubt, we paskin, that it's better to be Somech Geulah Tefillah than to daven with a minyan by Shachris, because that's the importance of Somech Geulah Tefillah. The point is you're not losing out on Somech Geulah Tefillah because you have part of it. Porei Shal Hashma tells you that even part is reckoned as good enough. So you have part of Geulah Tefillah. It's still called Somech Geulah Tefillah. It's not the full Somech Geulah Tefillah because you haven't mentioned Ava Rabbah and Kriya Shema and the bracha of Gal Yisrael. However, you have part of Geulah Tefillah. So it's good enough. It's good enough b'di'evet to have that and do Dvarim Sheva Kedusha. Do it with 10 people because you have already you have Geulah Tefillah. By Ma'ariv, the Ramah says the minhag is not to be Porei Shal Hashma. The reason is because we hold that really Ma'ariv is Rishos. It's not a total chiyuv to say Ma'ariv. The minhag is to say Ma'ariv. We don't really have to say Ma'ariv technically. And therefore, there's no inyan of being Somech Geulah Tefillah because Tefillah itself, the Shemona Esrei of Ma'ariv, is not inherently a chiyuv. The Birchas Kriya Shema and Kriya Shema at night are chiyuvim. However, the Tefillah is not a chiyuv. Therefore, there's no Somech Geulah Tefillah by Ma'ariv. And therefore, the Ramah says that really the minhag is not to be to be Porei Shal Hashma by Ma'ariv. He says the reason is because no Kaddish. But even if you want to say that technically that wouldn't inhibit the fact of Geulah Tefillah, but there's no mitzvah of Geulah Tefillah over there. There's no mitzvah of being Somech Geulah Tefillah. Since there's no mitzvah of being Somech Geulah Tefillah, so therefore it's better just to proceed and say it normally and not to do this Porei Shal Hashma. Because the whole purpose of Porei Shal Hashma is to get Geulah Tefillah. And I mentioned that Somech Geulah Tefillah might be D'Oraisa, right? What does it mean if it's D'Oraisa? I said Geulah Tefillah might be D'Oraisa. Someone smiled the whole day. Geulah Tefillah, if it's done with a minyan, then the Geulah Tefillah combining Kaddish and Baruch Hu and Kedusha, that's what you do until Kedusha, all those three things, right? Those things are Geulah Tefillah. You bring Somech Geulah Tefillah. Kedusha and Shemona Esrei. It's not called Kaddish. Kaddish is for dead people. Kedusha is when you're fully living and you're using your attributes and your talents and you're enjoying this world and using it as fully as possible. You're living life to its fullest. That's Kedusha. So therefore, Somech Geulah Tefillah with a minyan could actually be D'Oraisa. That's Dvarim Sheva Kedusha. That's all these things. Why do you say Kaddish? Why do you say Baruch Hu? Why do you say Kedusha with a minyan? All these things that we talk about Shemona Esrei, down Shemona Esrei with a minyan, that's a big thing for us. But really the most important part is Somech Geulah Tefillah with a minyan, and that's D'Oraisa. Somech Geulah Tefillah, if you're down to be Chidus. So again, there's an inyan to be Somech Geulah Tefillah. But it's not really D'Oraisa, I don't think, because it's not Dvarim Sheva Kedusha. Dvarim Sheva Kedusha was 10 people, and there's an inyan to be Somech Geulah Tefillah. At Ma'ariv, right, there's no more inyan over there to do Somech Geulah Tefillah. There's no mitzvah Somech Geulah Tefillah D'Oraisa by Ma'ariv, because Ma'ariv is a Rishus. So therefore, there's no reason to do this whole thing. Just say it normally, and you don't have to be Yotze the Chiyuv, because the whole point of these things to say it with a minyan is because the mitzvah D'Oraisa is Somech Geulah Tefillah. At Ma'ariv, you don't have it. That's therefore the minhag is not to do it at Ma'ariv. Hope you enjoyed today's share. See you in the next one.